Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on your time zone when you're watching this. Today we've got a fantastic treat. It's a little bit different than our XRP journey exactly, but it is Ripple related. I have been watching and following and reading the tweets of this young lady, and so she graciously decided to come on and give us a brief look into her world. And she has been writing her blog. Do you call it a blog on Coil?
Yeah, I do. I have a blog that's also web monetized on my website, but then I also predominantly post on Coil.
Okay, great. And so, Talia, I'd like to introduce you and just introduce yourself to everyone, and then kind of let everybody know how you got into writing, what you feel like you're doing with that, and then how you found Coil and how you feel like that's going to help advance what you're trying to do.
Perfect. So how I got into writing was towards the end of last year when I was actually lying awake one night and I couldn't get to sleep. And my boyfriend had said to me earlier in the day that I should take up journaling. And I couldn't get to sleep. I think I'd been awake for like 4 or 5 hours, just tossing and turning. So I decided to journal. And once I had finished doing that, I just felt like the weight of the world had been lifted off me. I went straight back to sleep. And then I told him the next day what had happened. And he was like, well, you should start writing. And then it all sort of began from there, where I started just publishing a weekly post. And then I set myself up a website late last year and decided to be more consistent with my writing, I guess. I do have the intention one day of hopefully publishing a book. And where Coil somewhat came in was I was posting, and I didn't really expect anyone to read my posts for at least a minimum of a year. I mean, there's so many blogs and different websites and things to read out there these days that I was more so just doing it to improve my writing and build that consistency muscle. And then one day he sort of offhandedly said, oh, you should take a look at Coil. And I was like, The Wire? Like, why do I need to look at that? And he was like, no, it's a blogging platform. Go and take a look at it. So I actually Googled it and I couldn't find it anywhere. It was quite hard for me to find it until he was like, just type in coil.com sort of thing. And I just was like clicking around, and I really liked that you could be a creator and receive payments for your writing. And I didn't really even sort of assume or know how much it was. But I liked also that there was like a subscription model to it, and there was the privacy aspect of it, and there wasn't any ads. So I was like, well, I've got some posts, I might as well just post them over there. And that was when I posted my first post on Coil, which was my year without alcohol. And I hadn't had Twitter before this, and I'm still working my way around tweeting and whatnot. But someone from the Coil community named XRP Gord, he reached out via my website and said, we saw your Coil post. Lots of people really like it. I shared it on my Twitter. So then I was like trying to tweet and figure out Twitter and find this. And then I joined, and that was like I guess like the reassurance that I needed to go onto Coil. And I also got, I think it was 4 cents. I received my first interledger payment a few hours after Gord had reached out, and it was like, you've received 4 cents. And I was like, this is the best 4 cents I've ever received or made in my entire life. Like, I was just mind blown. I was like, 4 cents. Yes, someone's read my post and I got 4 cents. So that was like a whole new world to me. And I'm very much into the law of attraction. And I'm the type of person that I am a hard worker. But if I lose interest in something, or if my heart's not in it, I just pivot quite quickly. And with writing, I never thought that it was a thing. Like, I'm much more of a talker. I barely passed English in school. So I just didn't realize that this whole world existed. But something I'd always wanted to be part of my reality was to do something that I loved and get paid for it, sort of thing. And then that happened with Coil, and that became a reality. And then that's really how I got involved in everything. And I guess it would really come back to my boyfriend, because he was sort of lurking behind the scenes, looking at XRP, Twitter, and whatnot, and then suggested Coil. And now here I am.
What a incredible story. And just think the revolution that will happen in the blogging world and the influencer world when all of the rest of them catch on. And the influencer, opportunity. And before I forget, write this down, and I'll make sure and put it in our Twitter conversation. But my law of attraction coach is a guy named Christopher M. Duncan, and he is the greatest. He's a Kiwi, and he lives in Australia now. And I think he's got plenty of videos, plenty of content on YouTube, and I think you will really, really, really appreciate where Christopher is coming from with how he's teaching everything. And I've been studying that stuff for a very long time. And keep a secret, I sleep under a copper pyramid.
Oh, nice.
I was watching a guy meditate. I was watching a guy meditate one time, Talia, on YouTube under a copper pyramid. And so I kind of scratched my head a little bit, watched a few videos about the Egyptians and the pyramids, and I figured, what have I got to lose? So I went down to a little hardware store, bought some copper, and configured this thing up. And so now I've got it hanging above my bed. So just in case there is something to this energy thing of this shape, I'm covered.
Yeah, totally. No, we had lots of I used to have lots of copper bracelets, so I know what you're saying.
Yep. So when you're writing, what is do you just sort of free flow with when you wake up and you feel like you just want to say something to everyone, or do you have anything in particular, a narrative that you're trying?
Well, I guess no. See, I'm always thinking about writing now, which is quite funny, because this time last year I was never thinking about writing. I think a lot of my writing draws inspiration and lessons from my own lessons in life. So like the past 5 years have been just a massive period of personal development and growth and learning about myself and who I am, and just lessons of life, really. So I'm always writing down ideas. I always have like an email open on Gmail where I write down my ideas as they come to me. If I'm reading a book, I get ideas from that. Like one of my posts, Am I a Hypocrite, was largely drawn from lessons I learned from Charlie Munger. Everywhere, really. I'm always thinking about writing. So it's not that I'm ever like trying to push a specific narrative. It's more so that I have like my core topics that I talk about, and then I have like notes and Trello boards full of ideas. And then I sort of think, okay, well, I haven't written about that sort of thing lately. Let me go back to my ideas folder and expand on that.
Well, have you run across in your studies yet? Have you run across something called the reticular activating system?
No, I haven't. And you sent that to me, but I haven't had a look at it yet.
That is very interesting. Basically, if you close your eyes and say red, 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 and then open your eyes, everything that's red in your field of vision kind of jumps out at you. And the brain researchers have discovered basically that it's the brain's way of narrowing our focus. In other words, if our brain didn't narrow our focus, we would just go nuts, because there's too much out there for us to be able to comprehend. So the brain has to narrow, and it can narrow based on a suggested thought. So you throw it out there, and we end up finding what we seek. And so it is very important, because the world is going to give us back a reflection of what we're repeatedly asking it to validate for us.
Totally. Yeah, I agree.
Makes sense?
Yeah, I'm gonna
I'm
have to
so
look
glad to be
into
able
that.
to say that to somebody. It's fascinating. They've got plenty of videos on YouTube. And the thing I like about that, Talia, is that it's brain research.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes when people are hearing about the law of attraction and all that kind of thing, they think that we're all nuts and we're into this woo-woo thing. And it really, to be able to have it validated by brain research is very comforting.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
it's really a lot more to that than what people, not just.
I agree, because it does sometimes people think it's a bit like woo and stuff like that, but I do believe, like you said, there are elements where science is involved and does back it up.
Well, I think the convergence of science and religion, I think, you know, we're all coming to find out that, you know, what we think and what we choose to think has a lot to do with the way that we're experiencing our reality.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't like that because they don't want the responsibility that they're not a victim.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm in such bad shape because of, you know, my job was terrible. They fired me. It wasn't correct. But I have learned for me as an adult that I participate in my life more than I had imagined.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. And I always try and be, I guess, empathetic and understanding of another person's situation. But when it comes to my own life, I have the same outlook. You know, it's on me at the end of the day. And funnily enough, as soon as I started thinking like that, my life started improving. So it is what it is, really.
Yeah. Well, I learned again a lot of time up until my life where I kind of had a reset. I didn't understand I had a vocabulary, but the definitions were all wrong.
Mm.
And the word responsibility in my mind meant guilt.
Mm-hmm.
And vocabulary, I broke that word apart. Response, ability. And it meant a whole different meaning to me.
Mm.
Now I understand that what's on the outside of me doesn't really matter. The only thing that matters is what it means to me and my response to it.
Yeah.
And so I play a game called Let's My Not Being Upsettable muscle every day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm virtually not upsettable.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, and it's funny because perception does, you know, one person can look at something and another person can look at it and they can see completely different things depending on their perception and their response to it. So I understand what you're saying and I agree with that as well, because your inner world creates your outer world.
Yep. And I, from my own personal experience, I know that excuse me, you did mention that you had stopped drinking. I'm a recovering alcoholic and drug addict.
Mm-hmm.
8/22/, 1984. And in the AA book, it says if you follow these suggestions, it says you'll be rocketed into the fourth dimension.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Talia, if you think about it, what in the world was a drunk writing about being rocketed into the fourth dimension 80 some odd years ago? So there's a lot. I'm just trying to say there's a whole lot more to that. There's a whole lot more of that 12-step stuff than meets the eye.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about perception and the way that we think. And so it's real. The responsibility thing was a part of that, learning how to respond, communicate it to myself, and then respond outward. And my point of that being is that living in the fourth dimension is living from the inside out. And so if I'm peaceful in here, and then what I'm sending out there is like Ringo Starr says, peace and love. It's just amazing how I seem to have that narrative validated on a regular. Planning my thinking has been a very incredible challenge.
Mm. Yeah, I resonate with that as well, and it's something that we always have to come back to and just continually reassess. And I can tell, funnily enough, like if I stub my toe or something, and then I'm like, oh, I've been thinking not in ways that line up with ways that serve me or that bring good things to me.
Yeah. And I think that you also would be amazed at the number of people that I have spoken with on the XRP interviews focused that I have done. The number of like awake, aware, law of attraction thinker people. It seems to be a pretty constant theme. Maybe it's early adapter, ideology, but it seems like that we've got a lot of people that are really open thinkers. And that's another thing that really excites me about the opportunity to connect with all of these people, because building new friendships with like-minded people is a wonderful thing to spend your time doing.
Definitely. Yeah, I did notice that. I think you did an interview with XRP Rose, and I noticed she always sort of retweets the secret sort of stuff. And I was like, oh, yeah, I agree with what you're saying, that I think it is that open-mindedness that brings people towards something like XRP even and the law of attraction.
Yeah, and if you ever get a chance to see anything, I don't know if you're following him on a couple of people on XRP Twitter. XRP Joe is another really like-minded person. Another person is James Rule XRP. Another person that you would really love to make connection with is Jay Holocene. He used to be J SPQR, but those guys kind of slowed up on working with the SPR group. But Jay is just, he's a great guy, and he has just been recently really beginning to start his education into, I guess you could call it, looking inward instead of outward. But yeah, it's to be able to have met the people that I can have these kinds of conversations with has been very surprising, and I'm glad to see that it seems like that. I guess it's an early adopter thing. I mean, I think that's what it is.
Yeah, I
So
also think it's that open-mindedness.
Yeah. So where do you see what you're experiencing now on Coil? Where do you see it going from here?
It's interesting because I sometimes forget. I just focus on the writing and then I forget about the platform. But I do see, hopefully in the future, where Coil is like getting a Coil subscription is commonplace. I think people are getting over ads, and I know for like myself, even for like newspapers and stuff like that, I don't want to sign up for that. Like, I know it sounds silly, but the $2 to read one news article. Whereas if I could just sign up for Coil for $5 a month and get access to all those things, it would make it a lot easier, because we're needing subscriptions for a lot of things these days. But these things don't just happen like in one silo. Like, say for example, you just got a subscription to Twitter. It's like, well, then what if I had to get subscriptions to all other social media networks? And that starts adding up. Whereas I like with what Coil's doing, it's like, okay, you pay this flat fee and then your viewing time gets streamed to the creator or to the media news outlet. And it makes it so easy for someone that just wants to read the content to jump on board. And then as a creator, I'm obviously there for the future, that when Coil subscriptions become commonplace, people are reading my stuff and I'm just getting streamed those payments.
Wow. I love the way that the vision of Ripple is rippling out into other areas than just, like small payments that they're working on, cross-border payments. And do you see the development of the Internet of Everything becoming our new reality, with AI coming along and all those kinds of changes?
Yeah, and like, to be honest, it's not something that I think about much, because it's not my area of expertise. Like, I honestly, I don't know anything about AI. I'm just a writer that publishes on Coil because I found out about it. So obviously it's the way of the future with where the internet's headed, with subscriptions and stuff like that. That's more so what I can talk about, because just as a user, that's what I would prefer to do. So I don't really know about the AI stuff like that. I don't really have an answer for that because it's just not something I know much about.
Understood. Well, what I meant was is that what Ripple is doing is kind of touching everything that we're doing. And in the payment portion, to me, one of the biggest things is that there are 3.5 billion people on planet Earth that don't have access to a bank account. So now think of all the wonderful creative writers and musicians and artists that will begin to basically join the rest of the human race because we're connected in our monetary system. And
Totally.
and it's working in your neck of the woods in being a creative writer and a blogger, not just, and that, I guess what I'm trying to say is Ripple is having a bigger effect than just in the payment portion of what they're helping to create in our world.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the really interesting part about Coil, which, like, for example, I'm obviously not like someone like Ryan Holiday yet. I'm obviously known on Coil, but outside of that, not just as much as obviously I plan to be in the future. And when you hop on Coil, you've got this, because the community in Coil is so supportive of one another. You've got this like direct access to a group of readers who are also creators in themselves. And it's just so exciting to have your work validated from something. And you, like, for someone like me who didn't know about crypto, it's like I'm just looking at that as a great way to reach people. And even when I had a friend who also believed in the law of attraction, and I said to her, you know, how have you been? And she said, oh, I moved recently, I've been writing a bit. And I said, well, you should jump on Coil. And that's how it starts sprinkling out to other people, because then her friends will want to read her writing, and then more people find out about Coil, and then they think, oh, what's the interledger protocol? What's XRP? And so on.
Yep. It's funny how the little connections end up being made over time. So I wanted to ask you a couple of other things. When I originally reached out to you, and one of the things that I'm looking to do is I'm looking to try to get as many people in our community with a different background to be able to do a video like this. So if someone wanted to share something about how Coil has changed, someone's life like it has yours, they could find that video on our channel or on our website and show your story to them. A housewife with 3 kids is going to relate to another housewife with 3 kids if someone wanted to share what XRP is all about. And so what I'm trying to do is get as many people in our community to get their story out there, so it makes it easier for us to share crypto or Coil or XRP to someone else, that they may hear it in a voice that they're more receptive to. So what I'd like from you is that you were a person who I never met before and just kind of tapped you on the shoulder and said, hey, would you be willing to come and have a friendly conversation with me? And you did. And what would you say to the people that I'm tapping on the shoulder that may feel hesitant? What would your message be to them?
It would be to just try everything. Before joining Coil, I've never done something like this. I also did a live stream with some of the other creators last week. And I think a big part of it for me personally was that I was just nervous, and because it's something that you're not used to doing. But I would say just try it. What's the worst thing that can happen? If you don't like how it's portrayed, I'm sure they could ask you to take the video down and it would be all good. I think we've all got a story to share, so why not just do it? It might take half an hour, but you'll feel all the better after it. I mean, I was quite nervous, not so much before this interview, but before my live stream last week, and after it, I felt amazing just for trying that new thing.
Well, stretching and growing is always a really good thing, because you learn a new skill. I mean, there's never a good reason not to be growing. And so the other thing is that we have got so much of a male domination going on right now in our community as well. And you watched XRP Rose, and now you were gracious enough to come speak with me. We've interviewed Boo Boo, Stephanie Starr, Crypto Eddie, but there are still more women out there that I'm trying to get to bring on to be able to share their story. Would you like to be able to see more of the voice of the XRP Army from the women, and you know, hope that I'm more successful being able to get more of our ladies to share their story?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm not necessarily biased whether it's a man or a woman. If there's value that I can get from it, I'll be listening either way. But I can definitely see how someone would relate more to, like a female would relate more to a female. It was XRP Rose's interview with you that sort of pushed me over the line. So yeah, I could definitely see how someone that isn't like a woman specifically that isn't too involved in crypto but wants to be part of even just the space or Coil would feel more open to having an interview if they saw more other women being interviewed by you.
Yeah, and again, I'm trying to do in my little way be able to help with the mass adoption by getting more stories out there, because I'm not. It's not that I'm trying to be detrimental to our great YouTubers who give us news videos every day. I watch them every day, but I want to try to fill in the niche where I can be a storyteller. I'd like to be able to be the person to help other people tell their story, because I think there's a spot for that. So
Yeah.
we'll see. We'll
And I
see.
think people don't realize that they actually have a story sometimes because they're just so used to it. So having you be able to do that for them is quite eye-opening for them.
Well, and again, you know, doing something that you didn't really have ever done before and weren't really sure if you could, and then you do it, and then you know you kind of chest sticks out a little bit further,
Yeah.
and you're like, yeah, I can do
Yeah.
this. My story does matter, and people
Yeah.
do care about my opinion. And we, you know, as the early adopters, part as well, and you, Talia, with your Coil evangelism, that's one of the things we've got to adopt the attitude of evangelist, and we've got to get our stories out there and share them with other people so they can look at it. Excuse me, I got allergies. So and so they can see, you know, what we see.
Yeah.
I mean, Coil is better than YouTube.
Yeah.
It just is.
Yeah.
For the influencer. It's
Yeah.
better. And so how are we going to be able to get more people to be able to know about it? We've all got to get out there and, you know, get content out there so people
And
can hear
even
about
with
it.
I guess the video platform of Cinnamon, especially for the creator, you can start monetizing your videos straight away, whether you put them on private or not. I know for myself, my first video was on private just because I'm still getting used to being in front of the camera. But even if it's public, for everyone that has a Coil subscription, you get streamed payments for however long they're viewing. And that gives you the best part about Coil and Cinnamon in that sense is that you get rewarded for quality content, because if a person isn't staying to read, you're not getting paid. So you can sort
Right.
of, there's no analytics per se, but you can judge by how many payments you've been receiving for that content. And then, okay, this isn't working, but that one did. So I'm going to move towards that. And I think even with creators, I mean, influencers that are on YouTube and are on Instagram, people develop a really strong relationship with them. And there's always going to be that core group that will want to support you. So why not let them do that just by paying that $5 fee? Whereas there are obviously some influencers that do sell lots of different products because they have to pay the bills. And I get that, but we could find that balance with things like Coil and Cinnamon.
Right. Yeah, I agree. All right. So the other thing that I always do with everyone that I get a chance to speak with is to pre-invite them to come back at some point. So in other words, if we got together again in a month or two, and then we could kind of share where things have gone from July 31st, and then what's happened since then. Because again, what I'm trying to do is connect with new friends and be able to continue the conversation. And because I believe if we do that, then we're all better off. So I'd like to pre-invite you to come back again, and I'm also very much looking forward to getting some feedback from you about the reticular activating system and Christopher Duncan. I think you'll really like that stuff. And as a parting message, Talia, what message would you like to share with everyone as your parting message?
I would just say there's so many secrets hiding in plain sight right now, like things like Coil and cinnamon. Now's the time to take advantage of it. Even if you're not sure about crypto, but you're a creator, just dive in head first. There's so many people on even cinnamon and Coil themselves that have really easy to understand articles. So just, the perfect time is now. There's so much going on in the world. Use it to your advantage to take part in these things before they become mainstream, and let them change your life just like they did mine.
Absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much. I'll look forward to continuing our conversation, and I wanted to talk with you briefly when I turn this thing off. And again, thank you very much for being here. It's another opportunity that I had expectations that were exceeded, and thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, take care.